Welcome to Pleasurology Island. I'm Free Thought Steve. Thanks for stopping by. Last time I was talking about the importance of body relaxation for pleasurology. And I realized there are four main components to what I could call the pleasurology prescription. You put these four ingredients together and you get the full pleasurology program package, basically, starting with body-mind relaxation, relaxing the muscles of the body and relaxing the emotional brain. Then adding cannabis, which is an emotional lubricant, kind of to help the emotional brain be more flexible and less inhibited. And then we add catharsis, which will be the topic of what I'm going to talk about today. Catharsis meaning emotional purification. Purification by letting any dammed up emotional energy that's still in our bodies and in our emotional brain, letting it flow out of ourselves in uninhibited emotional release of that energy. And then once we've done that, we go back to doing body-mind relaxation and calm down again. And at that point, when we've made relaxation the habit of our being, we get to the fourth ingredient, which is super-euphoric sexuality. And super-euphoric sexuality involves not just the cosmic oceanic orgasm that fills our entire consciousness with waves of orgasmic pleasure, but before that, being able to, in a relaxed manner, having our whole organism relaxed, become sexually aroused, give ourselves sexual pleasure, and gradually raise our level of sexual arousal in such a way that we don't trigger the orgasm reflex before we're ready to do it, but we can allow a surge of emotional sexual bliss to fill our consciousness and eventually get our consciousness entirely recruited, all of our brain recruited into a network of sexual bliss energy. And then we trigger the orgasm reflex and have a powerful cosmic oceanic orgasm, where it just flows through us like tidal waves. That's our ultimate goal in pleasurology, but it shouldn't be our main goal. Our main goal should be developing a pleasurological personality, a pleasurological character, which is a natural personality where we're not putting on a false front, we're just being ourselves naturally, and we're responding to whatever goes on around us in a very natural way. If somebody says something funny, we laugh, but in a natural way, not in a forced way. We're not putting on a performance for other people with our personality. We're not worrying about how are they going to judge me. We're just content with ourselves, the way that we are, the imperfect human beings that we always are, that all of us are. And as an imperfect human being, we accept the fact that some of our self is going to be good and approvable by others, but occasionally we'll do something stupid, we'll make a mistake, and other people will laugh at us or criticize us, and that's just the way it's going to be. And not everything that we do is going to please the people around us. A lot of people live their lives on edge. I used to be like this, on edge, trying to make sure that whatever I did would really please whoever I was with, would give just the right impression to whoever I was with so that nobody would be offended by me, they would be pleased by me. And that was before I started doing pleasurology, and it was when I was trying to cover up a deep sense of inferiority and sexual guilt inside myself, that I'd been hiding my true self because I was ashamed of my sexuality, which was basically just masturbation, but I had a lot of masturbation shame. And then I was also wanting to be the perfect person, the perfect good boy, for everybody else and never do anything wrong and so forth. So anyway, I got over that eventually, and it's much more relaxing to say, well, hey, I'm going to be who I am. I'm going to respond to the world in a natural way, an emotional way that I don't have a lot of anger. That's one of the important things about catharsis, is that we purify ourselves of any anger that we've been holding back from our past life so that we're not going to burst out in inappropriate anger at inappropriate times with the wrong people. That we've cleansed ourselves of enough of our anger energy that we can relax and let ourselves be just who we are, and we're not going to get angry unless somebody, does something that really deserves being angry at them for. We want to have our anger there for us as an emotional resource when it's the appropriate response to a situation, when it's actually necessary as a last resort, basically. But before that, other people can do things that maybe would have angered us in the past, but because we've gotten rid of our excess anger energy and we've become a calm person, we can take these things that other people do and we can say, okay, they're imperfect just the way that I'm imperfect. I'm not going to get angry about what they did. I'm just going to stay calm. And maybe they will be getting angry because they have a lot of repressed anger that they have not gotten rid of through catharsis, through emotional release. And so they're full of anger, and occasionally they will burst out in anger. And the natural response for some of us is to get angry right back. And that's what they want, because then they can get in a fight with us, if it's a verbal fight or a physical fight. But either way, they can get out more of their anger, dump more of their anger on us. So a lot of times they'll get angry, hoping we'll get angry back. And the best way to defeat that strategy is to not get angry back, but just be calm and be compassionate and say, okay, this poor person is angry, and I don't deserve having them get angry at me, but they are angry nevertheless. But I'll just stay calm and find out what they're angry about and accept what they have to say, and I will let them release their anger energy, if that's what they need to do, without coming back at anger energy with them, which would just make them more angry. Let them get it out. Stay calm and be compassionate and say, okay, something's going on with you that you're obviously upset. Tell me about it. Let me understand what it is. Just tell me about it. And usually they can, if they tell you about it, they'll feel better about it. And you'll realize, and they will also realize that they were getting angry about something else. It wasn't actually something I did. They were getting angry about something else that was making them really frightened, basically. Anger is a form of fear. Anger is the fear that things are not going to go well, that something bad is going to happen to me. Anger and fear are like twin sisters, the evil twin sisters of human nature. And of course, fear is useful and anger is useful. Both of them are useful in extreme emergency situations. But in ordinary social situations, it's better if we are relaxed rather than frightened, and if we've already gotten all of our anger out of our system, so that we're not filled with anger that we need to release. Because that's what happens with people who have not done catharsis, who have not gotten their anger out of their system, is a lot of times they're looking for something to get angry about. And most of the time they can't, they don't have an opportunity. Our society doesn't give people a good therapeutic opportunity to get angry about stuff. And that's why people go crazy and get angry in the wrong time, at the wrong place, with the wrong people, to the wrong extent. So catharsis is very helpful for diffusing the amount of anger that is being generated in society. And there's a lot of angry people running around out there because our society, our life in this society is such a stressful life that it makes people frightened, anxious, and angry. The more anxious people are, the easier it is for them to get angry. So it's very important that we find therapeutic ways to get rid of anger, which I will be discussing a little bit later. But the important thing is, after we've gotten angry, after we've done anger catharsis, it's not enough just to leave it at that. Then, once we've gotten that poison, that emotional poison out of our system, that anger, that fury, that rage, that we may be feeling very justifiably, we may have good reasons for being angry, and so it's important for us to be able to get the anger out in a socially supportive situation, where there's someone with us or a few people with us who say, yes, get that anger out. Get as much of it out of your system as you possibly can. Give it to me, bring it on out, get rid of it, and then, we'll talk about why you got so angry. Who are you really angry at? Were you angry at your parents? Were you angry at some school authorities, some police authorities? Usually it's some bully. Usually it's someone who's exerting power over us, who has more power than we do, and they enjoy exerting it over us in order to make us do stuff we don't want to do, and to make us follow their discipline, follow their rule, to get us to submit to their domination. And anytime we're forced, as a human being, anytime we're forced to submit to the domination of someone else, we get justifiably angry about that. All human beings are fundamentally equal by nature. We're all just a body with a human consciousness. None of us is automatically better than anyone else. And we should treat each other as equals, and that means with respect, not with domination. I'm very opposed to domination and submission. I would like to see us all respect each other and get along with each other nicely. And that way we can spend our energy nurturing each other and being affectionate with each other, because nobody's trying to push anybody else around. So it's important, after we've done therapeutic anger catharsis, where we're doing it in a socially supportive situation where people want us to get that anger out. And afterwards, after we've talked out what the reasons for the anger are, then it's important to get very calm again, to relax. And it's important for people to share nurturing affection. This is the perfect time after anger release to do sandwich hugs, where one person's in the middle and one person's on either side of them, facing them and hugging them, one from in front, one of them in back, and the person in the middle is getting a sense of total human nurturing, affection, and you can just relax into what feels like an oceanic experience of being nurtured, held, and cared for. That's what all human beings need. That's what we all want. That's what we should have gotten as children. And some of us get more of it, and some of us don't get anywhere near enough of it. And it's very important that as adults, we do get nurturing affection, physical affection. And so one of the important parts of pleasurology is having the courage to accept physical nurturing affection from others and to give it back to others. Our society does very little touching, and we're all starved for nurturing affection, unfortunately. Now, why is catharsis so important for pleasurology? Well, if you remember, pleasurology is the art of learning how to use our emotional brain in a way that we can generate more pleasure in our field of consciousness. We are the field of consciousness that our brain is creating. That's all we ever experience is the field of consciousness our brain is creating. our visual sensations, our auditory sensations, our skin sensations, our body sensations, our smell and taste, and the thought images that are going through our mind, and the emotional flavor of consciousness that permeates consciousness. And that's what makes a state of consciousness euphoric or dysphoric, enjoyable emotionally or unpleasant emotionally. And that emotional flavor of consciousness comes from our emotional brain responding to the situation that we're in. So our emotional brain has to be relaxed in order to respond with pleasure to pleasurable situations, and to respond with laughter to funny situations, to cry when we're in a genuinely sad situation. That's the best way of dealing with a sad situation, is to cry about it, because something bad has happened. That's really bad. We've lost something that we've cherished, and we don't have it anymore, and we're sad at the loss of that. And that sadness wants to come out of us in tears. And if we have a nice, relaxed emotional brain, our emotional brain will cry spontaneously whenever we're in a truly sad situation. And there's nothing that feels better than having a good cry. It's kind of the compensation that we get for the sadness that we've had, the loss that we've had. If we can cry the sadness out, then actually we feel euphoric afterwards. It feels good to have had a good cry and gotten the sadness out of our system. Sadness is a kind of poison in our system if we keep it in our system without letting it out. But if we let the poison out, if we cry it out, that's catharsis, that's emotional purification, then afterwards we get the compensation of a feeling of euphoria. You feel really good. Your body feels good. Your consciousness feels good after you've finished crying. So it's a shame that we all learn to stop ourselves from crying, because society, tells us that we shouldn't cry because it's a sign of weakness. It's not a sign of weakness. To cry is a sign of emotional strength. To not cry means you're afraid to get sad. You're afraid of how it will feel to get sad. And being afraid of our own emotions is a weakness, not a strength. To have the courage to feel our sadness and let the sadness flow through us and flow out of us in crying, in spontaneous crying, to have the courage to be as sad as we really are, that's real emotional strength. So anyway, a lot of pleasurology techniques don't involve emotional release or catharsis. And that's why they don't completely work to help us feel happy. For instance, a good example of this is actually Buddhism. Buddhism is all about relaxation, about quieting the thought stream in our mind, all those thought images that our brain is producing all the time. Let's get rid of those visual images, let's quiet the voice in our head, and let's just experience what we're experiencing right here and right now, either with our eyes open or with our eyes closed, but we're just experiencing the present moment in total stillness and quietness and calmness. And that's a very important thing to learn. And in all of the pleasurology traditions, Taoism from China, yoga from India, and Buddhism from South India and Southeast Asia and China and Japan. In all of these traditions, they emphasize making our consciousness orderly and stable so that our attention is steady. It's not jumping around from object to object. It's nice and still so that our whole consciousness can be stable, quieting the voice in our head, not thinking about the past, not trying to visualize the future, but just being in the present moment. And that's a great skill. I call it Zen for short. And but that's just one of the names for it. But basically, that's a calm and well-ordered field of consciousness. And that's a really important skill. But what's lacking in the Buddhist tradition is any appreciation of the value of emotional release, of catharsis, of feeling strong emotions, whether it be strong anger, strong fear, strong sadness, just getting wild and crazy, letting loose. See, you don't see much of that in Buddhism. All you see is the monks sitting around meditating, and being very disciplined and quiet, and nothing really spontaneous happens there. And of course, they don't use psychedelics. And so that's another reason why Buddhism is incomplete as a way of trying to become happy. It lacks catharsis and it lacks the psychedelics. And remember and it also really lacks super-euphoric sex. All three of those things. Buddhism has the calmness and the relaxation, the body-mind relaxation, although even in Buddhism, they don't pay enough attention to the body and relaxing the muscles of the body, which they pay much more attention to in Taoism and in yoga from India. There they have well-developed traditions of relaxing the muscles of the body. And but anyway, the one tradition that seems to combine everything that we need to have in a pleasurology tradition is the tradition of the Shiva religion from India. And the figure of the god Shiva is a mythological portrayal of all of the things that pleasurological individuals want to do. Shiva was the originator of yoga in the mythology. He invented yoga. He was the original stoner. He was the original guy who got high on cannabis. He did a lot of catharsis. He would, when he got high on cannabis, he would leap from mountain to mountain to mountain, just going crazy and doing a wild dance. And even today, the Shivite monks, they're sort of the naked yogis. They wear just loincloths in India. They will do a lot of drumming and dancing and releasing energy. So releasing emotional energy was part of the Shiva tradition, and super-euphoric sex was part of the Shiva tradition too. Shiva had a wife named Parvati, and Shiva and Parvati would have sex for 1,000 years at a time, because Shiva was a master of super-euphoric sex. And they would go into states of high arousal for 1,000 years at a time. Of course, nobody really does that, but it is possible to do it for hours and hours at a time and really enjoy it. And then have a cosmic orgasm. That's the one thing. The cosmic orgasm I have not really found mentioned in the Oriental traditions. So I don't know. There's a lot about extended sexuality, extended high arousal sex, but there's not a description of this cosmic orgasm, this oceanic orgasm. I think one of the problems is that an oceanic orgasm is so energetic. You know that there's just this huge amount of energy that's running through your body and your brain, and afterwards it leaves you drained. When you're finished with an orgasm like that, you don't want to do much of anything because you haven't got any energy. You just want to rest with good reason. You've had a great time. You've used a lot of energy, and you've thoroughly satisfied your sex drive. So now is a great time to just kick back and relax and rest and enjoy feeling so good after having completely enjoyed sex for a long time and then had a great orgasm that completely satisfies your sex drive. Excuse me. So I think they were afraid of the power of the Cosmic Oceanic Orgasm. I think they were afraid, particularly as people grow older. They wanted to conserve their psychological energy, their body energy, their life energy, and they felt that orgasms were perhaps discharging too much life energy, and it was bad for you. But that's not true at all. That's a superstitious, pre-scientific way of understanding orgasms. Understanding an orgasm scientifically, we know that sexual energy is a completely renewable resource. Our body is constantly going to be producing new sexual energy. All we have to do is take in food and breathe. And between oxygen and food, our body will be able to generate more energy very quickly. Now, our brain feels really tired at the end of an orgasm. And oftentimes there's kind of a switch that is flipped in our emotional brain at the time that we have an orgasm. And afterwards, we do feel really, really tired and not interested in doing much of anything, except possibly having something to eat, whatever. But that feeling of tiredness that comes right after an orgasm, that's just natural selection's way, particularly in men, of saying, okay, you've just shot your wad, dude. You have just expelled all the semen that's in your seminal vesicles ready to go. And it's going to take a while for them to recharge themselves. So in the meantime, there's no point you having sex anymore. You're done for now. There's no point having any more sex as far as natural selection is concerned, as far as reproduction is concerned. So natural selection has built into our brains a flip so that when men have had their orgasm, that's it. There's a drop in our energy level. Our brain is indeed has used up a lot of energy. A cosmic orgasm, there are billions and billions of neurons that are firing each time one of those orgasmic waves of pleasure comes up from the sex organs and through consciousness and out. That's using up a whole huge amount of two things that the brain needs to function all the time, sugar and oxygen. And a whole lot of that stuff gets used up every time we have an orgasm, particularly if it's a full brain cosmic orgasm. And our brain is indeed tired after that. And our attention is not as sharp. And, the world isn't as vivid as it was before the orgasm. And the brain is in recovery mode. Yeah, it's in recovery mode because it's just had an amazing experience, and all the neurons have just fired themselves crazy and they want to rest. So after an orgasm, it takes a while for us to build back up to our normal level of conscious energy. But that doesn't mean we've done ourselves any harm by having that orgasm. No, we've had a wonderful, wonderful experience, and it's fine. We've used the neurons in our brain. It's good to use them. It keeps them healthy to be used, and we haven't damaged them at all. And the energy that we've expended in the orgasm is energy that we will replenish very quickly. Go have a dish of ice cream and you'll get your sugar level right back up. Make sure to keep doing some deep breathing. It's not hard to replenish your oxygen, no harder than it is if you were to go out and run a 100-yard dash or something else. It would take you a few minutes to replenish the amount of oxygen in your system. But but those are very natural processes. Sexual energy is entirely renewable and replenishable. So it's unfortunate that the Asian traditions of pleasurology, were kind of had a phobia about orgasms because they felt they were discharging too much energy. Now, Wilhelm Reich had exactly the opposite idea. Who's Wilhelm Reich? Don't know if I've mentioned him before to you. He was an Austrian psychoanalyst. Psychoanalysis is Freudian psychotherapy, the first form of talking psychotherapy that was developed starting in the early 1900s with Sigmund Freud and a small group of people in Vienna, Austria. And Wilhelm Reich joined Freud's group shortly after World War I. Reich was born, I think, in 1899. So by the end of World War I, he was 19 years old and went to the University of Vienna to study medicine, heard about psychoanalysis, started attending the psychoanalytic meetings in Freud's home on Wednesdays, became a psychoanalyst himself. And both he and his wife, Annie, were psychoanalysts during the 1920s and 30s, first in Austria, and Reich was Austrian. He was an Austrian Jew. Almost everybody involved in psychoanalysis was Jewish. And then he moved to Berlin around 1930, I think. He was in Berlin for several years, and by that time, he was an experienced psychoanalyst, and he had begun teaching classes or rather leading a seminar of all the people in Berlin who were practicing psychoanalysis. Wilhelm Reich was leading that group, and basically they were all in the process of trying to discover what they could do with psychoanalysis to help people be happier, and how to do psychoanalysis better so that they had better results with their patients. Because it turned out that Freud's method was not that great at actually curing people of their neuroses. People could come to psychoanalysis year after year after year and never feel like they had solved their problems and gotten any happier. And so Wilhelm Reich didn't think that was sufficient. He felt there ought to be more success in the therapy. And so he was trying to figure out what's the deal. Well, Wilhelm Reich was the father of sex-positive psychology. Now, Freud knew that sexuality was important in psychoanalysis, but Freud took a very safe kind of attitude toward sexuality. He did not encourage people to actually have better sex lives, because he was coming out of that late Victorian period, and he was in enough trouble as it was, even talking about the fact that people had sexual wishes that they didn't dare tell anybody else because they were ashamed of them and embarrassed by them. And in fact, people had sexual wishes that were so socially unacceptable that every time that sexual wish or impulse came into their consciousness, it caused them to feel anxious. Oh my God, if anybody knew that I was sexually attracted to my mother or to my father or to my cousin or to anybody, or that I wanted to do this sexually or that, if anybody knew that I was like that, oh, they would think I was such a bad, terrible person. And Freud recognized that we all have what he called polymorphously perverse sexual impulses, desires to do things that were polymorphous, meaning any shape. Sexuality can take almost any shape. You can take almost anything, and it can become a sexual object of stimulation or arousal for you, and certainly we can have sexual attractions to a lot of people, and and the sexual activities we might want to engage with them. There might be oral sex, anal sex, as well as coital sex, masturbation, all kinds of things. So sexuality is polymorphous, has many shapes. It can morph into many shapes, polymorphous. And perverse simply, it didn't mean sick. Perverse simply meant anything other than penis-vagina sex. In Freud's day, penis-vagina sex was the only non-perverse type of sex that there was. Everything else was regarded as a diversion of sexual energy away from its biological purpose, which was reproduction. And, they didn't have the concept that we can use sex for a lot of things besides reproduction. In fact, reproduction is only one. We shouldn't use sex most of the time for reproduction because that's how we've gotten to have 9 billion people on this planet. Just huge amounts of people because we've been using sex too much for reproduction. We've got a lot of sexual energy. The human species is one of the most highly sexed species on the planet. We're sexy year-round, and we're attracted to multiple partners. And we've got a lot of sexual energy that we want to use, and it feels really good to use it. We have an abundance of sexual energy. And if we used it all the time for reproductive sex, pretty soon we're just going to have a planet full of people standing on each other's heads. There's not going to be any room, standing room only, if you're lucky. Stacked 3 people high, 4 people high, who knows? So it's very important to recognize that we do have a lot of sexual energy and that we have polymorphous ways of discharging that sexual energy. And all of them are good if they give us what we want, which is high sexual arousal followed by a satisfying orgasm, so that our sex drive is taken care of for a while. But we need to do it without having negative consequences that we don't desire, which could be unwanted pregnancy, it could be STDs, it could be breaking up a relationship because you've been having sex with somebody else when you were supposed to be exclusive with this person, and so you destroy the relationship. We need to find ways to discharge our sexual energy without doing any of those things, without having unwanted children, without getting STDs, and without breaking the heart of someone we love. So masturbation is probably the best outlet for our excess sexual energy. And the only thing about masturbation, the drawback is that it's usually solitary rather than social. It would be nice if we can make masturbation social in a way, in some way. That's why phone sex is nice, because it's a social form of masturbation, very nice. And we could, come up with ways of enjoying solo sex sociably. But it will take some invention and some courage to do that, and some new social customs, let's say. But in any case, to get back to Freud and Wilhelm Reich and sexual energy and catharsis. Now, Freud's idea for therapy was all you have to do to cure people is find out what their hidden secret desire is. If it's a boy, maybe he will remember when he was younger having sexual attraction to his mother, and that was such an anxiety-provoking thought, because if anybody found out, he would get punished for it or be considered a sick person or whatever. And so Freud said, what you got to do is just, so this desire, this forbidden sexual desire, makes us feel anxious, and because it makes us feel anxious, as soon as that desire comes into consciousness, we push it back out, or we run away from it by thinking about something else instantly. We don't let ourselves think about that forbidden wish, whatever it was. And what Freud said is that creates a state of stress in the individual. He said there is energy associated with that forbidden desire. And when you push the desire out of consciousness, that energy has to go somewhere. And what it does is it goes into neurotic symptoms, the symptoms of neuroses. And neuroses can be all kinds of things: headaches, backaches, nausea, phobias, fears, depression, all kinds of things that make us unhappy. Freud said, well, those symptoms are coming because we have repressed these forbidden sexual wishes, and we're not allowing them into consciousness. And that creates this tension. It splits off the energy, and the energy creates the neurotic symptoms. And he said, well, how are we going to cure this? Well, you get the person really relaxed, have them lie down on a couch, and let them talk and talk and talk. Originally, he used hypnosis, but he gave that up. Just get relaxed and talk and talk and talk. And eventually, that forbidden wish will pop into your head. And you're obligated to tell it to your psychoanalyst as soon as you realize it. And then your psychoanalyst says, okay, good. You remembered that you were sexually attracted to your mother at some point. Don't hide that fact from yourself. That's a natural thing that happens. It happens almost universally. According to Freud, everybody, is sexually attracted to their parent at one time or another. He was wrong about that. Some people happen to be sexually attracted to their parents and others don't. So don't feel bad if you don't have an Oedipus complex or an Electra complex where a girl is, in love with her father. A lot of young children are in love with their parents, because they're the kindest, most loving, gentle person around. And they may also be sexy. And so there may be easily be a sexual attraction between a child and a parent. So Freud said, okay, the thing is, when the person remembers that feeling, remembers that wish, don't tell them they're bad for it, just the opposite. Say, yes, tell me all about it. And the person talks about it, and the psychoanalyst says, okay, good. Now you've allowed that wish back into consciousness. You've looked at it. Are you going to act on it? Well, no. I'm grown up now, and my parent is old or dead. And so I'm not going to act on that wish. So what the psychoanalyst says is then you don't have to be afraid of that wish. That wish is not going to make you actually do something that other people are going to get upset about. Just allow that wish into your consciousness, accept it as a normal part of the polymorphously perverse human sexual nature, that our sexuality can be attracted to lots of different people, and it doesn't matter. Accept it as part of human nature. But the important thing is to accept it consciously, to recognize consciously, yes, I did have that wish, and I'm not going to do anything about it, but I don't have to be frightened of it, and I don't have to create tension inside my own nervous system by pushing that wish out of my mind, by running away from that wish into thinking about something else compulsively, so I won't think about that wish that's over there. But it's always there. And you always have to keep tension within your system to keep that idea pushed out of your mind. Let it into consciousness, whatever it happens to be. And this goes for basically any traumatic memory, any emotionally charged memory that we might have. It's important to let those memories into consciousness and deal with them, feel how we feel about them, allow ourselves to feel the feelings that go with those ideas. Traumatic memories can be painful memories of loss and other things in life, or angry memories, whatever it is. If it's an emotionally charged memory, the healthy thing is to let it into our consciousness so that we face it consciously and release whatever energy is created in our emotional brain by that memory. When we remember it, the emotional brain will respond to it with a certain kind of emotion. We deal with it and we say, okay, that memory was a long time ago. It's not happening now. I can breathe out and sigh out the energy that is associated with that memory. And then I don't have to worry about pushing it out of my mind. When the emotional energy settles down, I can let that memory just evaporate and go on calmly with the rest of my life. But I haven't been made nervous and anxious by the memory. So that was Freud's method of therapy, is let whatever we have pushed out of our consciousness, any memories that have been pushed out of our consciousness, let them back into consciousness, let back into consciousness any of our wishes, and accept them as part of who we are as a human being, as an imperfect human being. Maybe we wanted to kill somebody because we were so angry at somebody, we wanted to kill them. We need to remember that and feel that. We're not going to go and actually kill them now, but we need to do something with that energy. And sometimes we can just breathe it out, but sometimes we need deeper catharsis than that. And the catharsis for anger that I was talking about earlier, that is most effective, is a bataka battle. B-A-T-A-K-A, bataka. A bataka was something that was invented back during the psychedelic counterculture of the 1970s as a way of releasing anger. And what it is a club. It's about that long, and it's big and round like that, and it's got a handle on one end with a hand guard on it. So it's like a sword, but it's a big sort of sausage of foam rubber on a stick. It's like a hot dog on a stick, but it's made out of foam rubber. And on the outside, there's a soft velour covering, nice soft outside, so it's not going to hurt you. And so what you can do, if you've got two of these batakas, you can have bataka battles. And people can fight each other and clobber each other with the bataka and get as angry as they want at the other person. And the other person can clobber them back. And neither one of them can hurt the other one, no matter how hard they hit them. So it's great. You don't have to hold your anger back. You can get just as angry as you want and beat on the other person as hard as you want. And they'll just laugh, and hit you back. It's absolutely fun because, first of all, you're not really fighting with the person that you're angry at, and you know that. And the person that you're fighting with knows that you're not really angry at them. You're getting your anger out at your father, who used to come home drunk and beat you, or some other person, some bad school administrator or something like that, or somebody who was mean to you, some boss, or somebody that you just can't stand them. You hate their guts, and you want to get that anger out. And so you just clobber on the other person, but you're not clobbering that person that you're really angry at. You're just thinking about that person and wishing that it was him that you were clobbering, and you're hitting him as hard as you can. And when you can hit somebody as hard as you can with a bataka, you can feel your own power. You can say, yeah, that's how much strength I've got in my body. That if I was really angry at somebody, I could use that strength against them if I needed to. But you can find out how much power you've got. You can find out how much anger you've got, and how much anger would fuel your attack on someone if you were angry at them. And that gives you a sense of power as a person. You're not cowering anymore. And you don't have to worry about the other person hurting you back, because even if they're a big guy, I've had a bataka battle with a guy who was a head taller than me, and weighed a bunch more than I did. And he was like 17, 16 years old, and I was like 45 or so. So he was huge, but, I could hit him hard, and he was actually scared. He had a terrified look on his face when we first started fighting with our two batakas, because he was scared that he was going to hit me too hard and I was going to get really mad at him and punish him, because, I was actually in a position of authority over him, because he was at a halfway house for troubled teenagers, and I was working for the halfway house. So I was the person in authority. So he was really frightened at even hitting me. He didn't, but after a while he realized that no matter, he hit me, I kept hitting him so hard that, he had to eventually hit me back, and eventually he just got into it and started hitting me as hard as he could. And we had a great time wailing on each other. In fact, I did this with the whole group of kids young men, that I was the custodian for at that moment. There was about 6 of them. And one of them was just this little guy, but he was little, but he was the meanest one of the bunch. Oftentimes, small people, because they're small, because they're frightened of being surrounded by bigger people all the time, they develop a very fierce personality to protect themselves. So this little kid was the biggest troublemaker in the whole group, So it was great for him to get in this bataka battle, and even though he was smaller than the other guys, he could wail on him as hard as he wanted, and they would wail on him back, and neither one of them got hurt, and everybody got a turn to do it, and everybody got their entire anger out for that day, and everybody felt so good. We went across the street into the park, and everybody just sort of ran around, romped around, and played and had a good time. It was the only time that I saw that bunch of guys happy the entire time that I worked there, which wasn't that long. I only worked there about a month, because they fired me the day after I did that bataka battle for doing that, because it was forbidden. But that was the only time they were ever happy, was when they got a chance to purify themselves of their anger, And if the people who've been running the company, instead of firing me, had listened to me and had agreed with me that this was a good thing and started doing this, they would have had a successful program. But their program was based on preventing people from getting angry and punishing them every time they did get angry, which has made them angrier. So their whole program was built for failure, because they didn't include healthy anger catharsis in their process. So anyway, bataka battles are a great way to get anger out, and everybody has a great time afterwards. Everybody's friendly and happy with each other, because anger is a kind of poison. And we all have things that we are justifiably angry about in our lives, and it's great just to get that anger out of our system every so often. And then afterwards, then is the time for sandwich hugs. Then is the time, for really being friendly and having a great time. So that was not part of psychoanalysis. Freud didn't get that far. He was just comfortable with talking with people, letting them talk about their forbidden emotional impulses and become conscious of them, and then to say, okay, but I'm not going to act on them, renounce the impulse. He did not go so far as promoting catharsis. Although, in the only cases that he ever successfully cured early in his career, it was spontaneous catharsis of mostly crying that brought about the cure and made the person feel better temporarily. But even catharsis can't make a person emotionally healthy all by itself. It requires learning how to be relaxed. Once we've got rid of the poisons, we need to relax our body because our bodies have all gotten tensed up from years and years of repressing our emotions. Years and years of feeling like we wanted to get emotional, but then having to hold that back. That creates a tension that doesn't just go away with one session of catharsis. It also needs to be relaxed away with physical relaxation exercises and mental calming exercises so that you combine the best of Buddhism and catharsis therapy, emotional release therapy. You combine both of them, and then you can turn your organism into a place that feels good enough that you're not angry all the time. Because a lot of our anger comes from the fact that our bodies don't feel good. And our bodies don't feel good because we've been holding our emotions in, and that has made us tense from head to toe. And that was the key insight that Wilhelm Reich had. Wilhelm Reich, R-E-I-C-H, the proper pronunciation is Reich, like that with a soft sh at the end, because it's Austrian, not German. In Germany, it would be Reich, but in Austria, it's Reich. What Wilhelm Reich figured out was that catharsis was a necessary part of dealing with our repressed emotions. It wasn't enough just to identify the emotion, bring it into consciousness, and say, okay, I'm not going to feel that emotion anymore. I'm not going to do anything about it. Now that I brought it into consciousness, I can let it go away. That wasn't enough. There had to be catharsis as well. And the other key thing was he felt this was absolutely essential for having more powerful orgasms. And Reich felt that having more powerful orgasms was an essential part of emotional health. Because our sexual drive generates a certain amount of energy in us, and we need to release that energy every so often so that we don't get supercharged with energy and running around all. That's another way of becoming tense, is if we have undischarged sexual energy. So Reich emphasized the importance of catharsis and the importance of more powerful orgasms. And I'll talk about that more next time. I'll tell you a little bit more about how he was working toward that with a certain type of therapy that he did that wasn't completely successful. And I will tell you how I happened upon a therapeutic method that is thoroughly successful in discharging powerful emotions and repressed emotions, helping the repressed emotions come up to consciousness. Cannabis is a great help in that. And of course, Wilhelm Reich didn't have cannabis to use because he was living back in the 20s and 30s and 40s when it was totally illegal. But anyway, as a member of the counterculture, the first wave counterculture of the 1960s and 70s, I was using cannabis along with body-mind relaxation and catharsis in experimental drama, and then calming relaxation with Zen and breathing and stretching out my muscles. And altogether, then that allowed me to learn how to have super-euphoric sex. Okay, I'll tell you more about it next time. Thank you very much for listening. Have a wonderful day.